world. The Stoics were a group of philosophers who would talk about impressions of emotions as the thing that they link to all evil. The further you'd have the uh, Middle Platonist Plutarch, who would, in his Moralia essays, compare or talk about emotions in the sense of a imperfection. Skip ahead, you have Søren Kierkegaard, who wrote Either Or, where he would talk about emotion in the sense of a uh, poet who would get really depressed and suffer a lot, but he would show off beautiful music. Then he wrote in the same book, Either Or, that of the story of Johann, a lover who would find love, who would seduce Cordelia. And then skip ahead to the current days. You have a lot of conceptions of emotion which seem like they're also pretty negative. But you'd have people who would think of depression and anxiety and anger as some type of terrible monster or a bad disease. But is emotion are these emotions really all that bad? Well, Montaigne would actually assume that emotions are not necessarily bad, but we deal with them in certain ways that might be bad. Like, for example, he would talk about someone who would get humiliated because of some part of their body which they weren't very comfortable about. So they would end up killing themselves over it. Um, and uh, Yet, he would also talk about these certain parts of our bodies as part of what makes us us. And so I think the same can be applied to emotion that, I'm sad or I'm angry, I am anxious, I'm happy, but that's all part of me. And so, is there any evil or terribleness to it? Nope. There's no evil or terribleness to it because it's part of what defines me. It's an attribute. Or as Debbie Hume would assume that objects don't exist except for the attributes that make them up. And since these objects of emotions are within our lives as human beings, well, they're part of us. So they're not necessarily an evil thing at all. Nor are they scary or terrifying. Now, um, there's a big thing we have to also talk about with these types of things where some emotions are seen as bad and some are seen as good. When you look at a lot of terrible things that happen in life, such as someone who gets really bad bouts of misfortune and might kill themselves as a result of uh, feeling really bad about it. Or you might have someone who gets really angry and tragedy happens. And a lot of these things aren't really caused by the emotions themselves as much as they're caused by what happens when someone makes the choice from these emotions, where they would think for me and then they would fight themselves and beat themselves up until things become out of control. And a big part about this is that the emotion is a uh, thing that can actually cause good or it could be bad. In fact, it's all up to you. Now, for example, let's look at depression. Well, in my opinion, depression is more like a sadness which has turned to hopelessness. Now then, you could also have people who get frequently sad, but are they depressed? By no means. Like someone could get really sad because they're lacking in wisdom, which is the case with me a lot of times. But does that mean I'm depressed? No, because I didn't give up hope. In fact, I look for the answer, then I think about how I may obtain this wisdom in the sense that type of melancholy becomes a sort of blessing towards me because I'm able to use it to a productive end of which it seems like it is based off of my values, and so in my values I actually am able to grow through this melancholy. Now let's say if someone gets really angry because of a perceived wrongdoing, well, that's not necessarily bad, because if someone sees someone getting let's say oppressed or beaten up by someone else, that person will uh, more than likely rush to the aid of that person who they see as being oppressed. Now, as to anxiety, well, a lot of people who do get anxiety often come out of it stronger, and they see this lacking in their lives. When they see this lacking in their lives, they might go to a doubtful stage, and in this doubtful stage, they actually uh, start to grow because they try to get out of this doubtful stage and onto a better life. Now, as to happiness, well, since everyone seems to want to be happy, you can see happiness as not necessarily a good thing, but more rather a reward that people get when they see that things can go right. But can happiness always be a good thing all the time? Well, I'd have to answer no. Because when you're happy all the time, that actually makes you unprepared when something bad happens. For an example, if someone's tossing a ball to another person and that person keeps catching the ball in this very small little area on their hands, and suddenly the ball comes up high like that and skips out of their hand, what happens there is that they're not prepared to raise their hand up and catch that ball. And that's the same thing with happiness. So let's recap that emotions are not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, we should actually accept emotions as part of our lives, and we should actually even use emotions to study ourselves and our personality, and actually learn how to become better versions of ourselves just by seeing what we value and what things that these emotions can teach us in our lives as we use our minds and learn how to reason better, even with the emotions. This is Game Philosopher. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, dislike, debate, whatever. I don't care. Troll my YouTube channel. I don't really care. Do what you like. But don't get caught up in these bad and negative perspectives on emotion. It's not good for your health. It's not good for anything.